Hi there, and welcome to our penultimate video in the discussion of intercultural communication. In this video, we want to talk a little bit about how do we develop teams and as well as deal with intercultural conflict. Now, whenever we get people together, there's always going to be some kind of a conflict that occurs. And there's often many factors involved in the aspects of conflict within a particular intercultural relationship. Now, the things that make up those different factors are many, but one of the ones that we want to talk a little bit about here is the idea of uncertainty reduction. As we've mentioned earlier in the class, whenever people from different backgrounds, different understandings of the world get together, there's going to be a little bit of uncertainty, at least, in how we deal with each other. Now, the wider the gap between those cultural differences between people, the more that uncertainty will be there. So uncertainty reduction theory teaches us that the primary goal when interacting with a stranger is to reduce uncertainty and increase the level of predictability of behavior. So it can be proactive in the sense of weighing our options before we interact with people. What is this person going to be like? What are the sort of things they might say? And we anticipate those. Or it can be retroactive in trying to explain behavior after it happened. Well, so-and-so only said and did what they did because of who they are as a person. So it's very important that we begin to think through how do we develop a process for avoiding some of these stereotypes that occur in uncertainty reduction theories, but ultimately being aware of the fact that whenever we meet new people, regardless of where they come from, there's going to be a certain amount of uncertainty. And the process of developing a relationship is the ability to reduce some of that uncertainty. Now, in socio-communicative orientation, assertiveness and responsiveness is an important aspect. And that, again, those are measured using scales. The most popular of those have been developed by McCloskey and Richmond. And these scales have been used successfully in other cultures, including places like China and Russia. But these scales were designed to measure assertiveness and responsiveness, as defined in places like the US. And I'm not sure that they are easily generalizable for people of other cultures. Studying assertiveness and responsiveness across cultures is sometimes a bit of a tricky aspect to work on. So how do we begin to work on some of these aspects? Well, the first thing, as we've said before, is to think about your own background, your own way of dealing with conflict across different cultural backgrounds. Now, you've got to think about who you are as a person. How do you generally deal with conflict anyway? Are you the sort of person who likes to accommodate and just give in? Are you the sort of person who tries to avoid conflict altogether? Are you somebody who's always seeking to find a way to collaborate and compromise? Or are you somebody who's simply in it to win it? You want to make sure that whatever the conflict is, you are going to win that conflict. Because the answer to that question is going to be somewhat determinative in how successful you're going to be in dealing with conflict across different cultural backgrounds. And one of the things that we want to talk about in this class is a way of dealing with conflict in general that can also be applied to different cultural contexts. And that way is thinking about this idea of crucial conversations. If you think about having a conflict with somebody in the workplace, or at home, or in a venture that you're a part of together, or in cross-cultural work in general, having a way to deal with difficult conversations that will inevitably accrue is very important. And basically it's a way of recognizing your own patterns in conflict situations and how to get to the essence of what that conflict is. You probably realize this anecdotally already, but many times the real issue is not dealt with in a constructive manner, either because we don't diagnose it, or sometimes we allow emotions, anger, even our own insecurities to mask over what really needs to be done. So how do we know that we're in a crucial conversation? Well, that's a crucial part of the discussion. And in my view, there are essentially three parts to a crucial conversation. One is opposing opinions. The other is strong emotions. And finally, high stakes. When these three elements are put together, that is a combustible situation. So how do we begin to deal with this? I want to explain it step by step with you very briefly. There are 8 principles that are dealing with the idea of constructive conversations, dealing with these difficult situations. And the first step is really to get unstuck, recognizing that there is a need for a conversation. So when a conversation moves into one of those or all of those 3 elements that I mentioned a few moments ago, we need to recognize that and realize that there's probably a shift that needs to occur if this situation is going to be resolved. And secondly, it's important for us to start with the heart. Why did you not say what you were thinking? For example, think about the last time you had a really, really difficult conversation about an important issue and it didn't go well. Maybe you became pushy, maybe both of you were fuming, maybe you started to shout, call people names. Why did you not say what you were thinking? And what was at the heart of that particular conversation that was never spoken? And here's something to consider. The saying, if you don't talk it out, you'll act it out. Is that true for you? Once again, it's important for us to look inside ourselves and consider how much of this conflict is down to the way in which I want to respond to the situation or control it. And thirdly, it's important for us to learn to look, as they say. Now, we can sometimes assume that the message is the problem, so we become tempted to water it down or avoid the issue. But what may be a better way is to find out why a discussion is evoking such a response. When we learn to look, it means that we're actually looking at the way in which our conversation is affecting the way in which a person responds. And then fourthly, to make it safe. When it comes to safety, it's all about the intent. A worst case scenario, people completely miss the signals that indicate that people are beginning to feel unsafe, that a person in power is beginning to abuse that power, and the subordinates are then feeling as though they are unable to speak, so they just plunge ahead. The best case scenario is that a person recognizes that safety has now left the room and they're able to step out of the issue and try to rebuild that safety. I care about you. I care about your best interests. As someone once said, respect is like air. You don't think about it until it's gone, and then it's all you think about. So it's important for us to watch for signs that respect is at risk, especially when issues become debates, people begin to accuse, name call, raise voices, etc. Fifthly, master your story. Now, when it matters most and our emotions kick in, we often do our worst. When we start to get emotional, that is usually not the best time for us to have these crucial conversations. So are you able to master your own story? The reality is, very often when something happens, we blame it on somebody else. Do you find yourself sometimes saying, so-and-so made me so angry? Did they really make you angry, or did you make yourself angry? Did you make the decision? You can either act on your emotions, or you can become hostage to them. Now, when you're in a leadership capacity, your emotions are always going to be tested by people. And if you fight fire with fire, you will be the loser every time, because even if you win the argument, you will still ultimately lose. So we have to learn how to reconstruct the narrative. It is important that we understand that we don't have a complete understanding. We tell ourselves a story about the facts. We make judgments, conclusions, attributions. This is why you do what you do. You do this simply to annoy me. Your story may be accurate, but it's never the full story. And if we allow ourselves to base our own actions off incomplete data, we not only risk being wrong, but making a bad decision. And in leadership capacities and situations, we can't afford to make the wrong decisions. So master your story and make sure that you have all the facts. You need to state your path. Now, STATE is an acronym that stands for sharing the facts, telling your story, asking for others' paths, others' stories, talking tentatively, and encouraging testing. As someone once said, you've not converted a man simply because you've silenced him. When you share the facts, facts are ultimately pretty persuasive. And facts are not insulting. We may not like them, but they are the plain truth. So stick to the facts and not necessarily your opinions why. If somebody is habitually coming to work late, let them know that on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, you came to work 20 minutes late, as opposed to telling them they're lazy or they came in late because they don't care about their job. That is a narrative. Ask them for their parts. Why are they acting the way they do? Why are they late? Be humble. And don't assume as though your version of the story, your version of the facts, are the only ones there is. Oscar Wilde once said, I like to do all the talking myself. It saves time and prevents arguments. And sometimes we are like that. We just want to forge ahead with our own ideas. Talking tentatively is about the idea of suggesting rather than saying this is the fact of the matter. Allowing yourself to be corrected and encouraging testing. Asking people what they think ought to be done about a certain situation. And that is exploring somebody else's path. And finally, move to action. When we finish off these types of crucial conversations, well, we have to realize that if we just leave it as an open-ended kind of discussion, it can lead us into a whole new set of problems. So it's important in these aspects that we consider how we're going to make decisions. Decide how you're going to decide. You have to think through the best way to move forward. Who is going to make this decision? Who is going to be affected by this decision? Who needs to know about it? Who needs to agree? Who needs to be involved? Who doesn't? Sometimes you need consensus. Other times you need a majority vote. Make sure people are clear about what they have a say in and what they don't have a say in. And a good rule of thumb is to make sure that you document all of your conversations. Regardless of cultural and linguistic backgrounds, it's important that we have a clear understanding of the facts. So consider these 8 different steps and which one is most important for you to begin mastering today.